Welcome back to MHS, Midnight Horror Stories. I know that many of you turn to these videos as a gentle way to unwind and ease into sleep. So, before you drift off tonight, could you help me with a small favor? Just leave a quick interaction, a comment, a like, or let me know where you're watching from and what time it is. My goal is to hit around 200 likes within the first 24 hours. Simple actions like these help YouTube appreciate the content and spread the show to more people. Now then, let's dive into tonight's horror stories. I can never sleep in a completely silent room, because in absolute silence, I'll hear that sound again. I'm Amy, and that year, I was 12 years old. My parents sent me to the town of Phoenicia in New York to spend the summer with my maternal grandparents. Their wooden house was located far from the main road, surrounded by cornfields and pine forests. My grandparents' closest neighbor was Mr. Bill, about 60 years old, who lived alone. Mr. Bill was as strong as a bison. Every day he did all sorts of different jobs around his ranch. On the third day after I arrived, Grandma rushed home, her face ashen. "Bill is dead." I was stunned. Just yesterday, Mr. Bill had waved from across the fence as I walked by. The doctor came to perform an autopsy that same afternoon. After an hour of examination, they concluded it was a natural death due to sudden cardiac arrest. The strange thing was, no one had ever seen Mr. Bill show any signs of illness, not even a cough or a cold. He was always healthy and full of life. Following the farming community tradition, families would bury their loved ones on the same day in the plot behind their house. The funeral was attended by many town residents. Even though I had only just met him, I was very fond of Mr. Bill, so I went with Grandma to attend the funeral. I stood next to Grandma, watching them lower the coffin into the deep hole, feeling both sad and a little shiver. That night, I couldn't sleep well, probably because Mr. Bill's sudden death was still haunting my mind. In the middle of the night, I woke up because I had to use the bathroom. My grandparents' bathroom wasn't inside the house. It was a separate outhouse located in the plot behind the house. The path to it was a small dirt road. I hesitated for a few minutes, then decided to grab a flashlight and step outside. The August night air was chilly, and crickets chirped from everywhere. The faint moonlight filtered through the trees, casting strange shadows on the ground. As I walked past the fence that separated the two properties, I saw Mr. Bill's fresh grave. I continued towards the outhouse, my hand gripping the flashlight tightly. Just as I stepped inside the outhouse and sat down, I heard a sound. It was a thumping. I held my breath, listening. The thumping continued, steadily. Then another sound, a weak scream. I jumped up, my pants not even properly pulled up, and ran at full speed back to the house. I cried as I ran. When I got home, I rushed straight into Grandma's room and shook her shoulder hard. "Grandma, they're screaming near the outhouse." Grandma sat up, her eyes still hazy from sleep. "Amy, what's wrong with you? Did you have a nightmare?" I was still crying and gasping for breath. Grandma took me back to my room and tried to comfort me. "The strange sounds you heard are perfectly normal for a sparse wooded town like this. You're just imagining things. Sleep tight." Maybe Grandma was right. Maybe I was overthinking things. I lay down, but I couldn't sleep. Near dawn, I had to use the bathroom again, but didn't dare go alone. I woke up Tom and Lisa, my two cousins who were sleeping in the next room, and asked them to come with me. All three of us went outside with flashlights. On the way to the outhouse, Tom and Lisa whispered about how I might be stressed because of Mr. Bill's death. But when we got closer to the outhouse, everyone fell silent because we heard that sound. This time, it was desperate pleas from underground. Without another word, all three of us ran back to the house as if chased by ghosts. This time, when we woke up Grandma and Grandpa, the two adults saw the fear on Tom and Lisa's faces and knew this wasn't just my imagination anymore. No one could go back to sleep. The three of us took turns recounting in detail what we had heard, especially me, having witnessed it twice. That sound, I think it was Mr. Bill. My words left the whole family stunned. No one could sleep anymore. Grandpa quickly put on his clothes and ran to Mr. Bill's son's house to meet him. Their conversation lasted a very long time. It took hours of persuasion before Grandpa finally got permission from Mr. Bill's son. They then called a few other men from the farming community to help dig up Mr. Bill's grave. An hour passed, and they all worked together to clear the last layer of soil and open the coffin lid with trembling hands. Mr. Bill's body was now face down. When Mr. Bill's son turned his father over, all the men present were practically frozen. Mr. Bill's eyes were wide open, his mouth agape as if he had been desperately trying to scream. His entire body was covered in scratches and dried blood. There were also claw marks on the coffin lid, evidence of the terrifying last hours of his life. Mr. Bill had been buried alive. His son knelt beside the body, sobbing. My grandpa and the other men stood around, unable to believe the horrific scene they had just witnessed. The doctor who had performed Mr. Bill's autopsy earlier was called in. After re-examining him, he concluded that Bill had overexerted himself, leading to sudden cardiac arrest. It was a rare case that caused him to be mistakenly thought dead, when in reality he had only fallen into a deep coma. Bill ultimately passed away from suffocation or a heart attack while in the coffin. Many years have passed, but I still cannot forget the desperate thumping that echoed from underground, the cries for help from a man buried alive. I thought I'd gotten a great deal on a house until I discovered the horrifying secret hidden inside. I'm Maya, a freelance designer. In March of last year, I decided to leave Los Angeles. City life had exhausted me. The endless traffic, skyrocketing rent, and the feeling of loneliness in a city of millions. I wanted to find a quiet place, a small town in Northern California, to start a new life. I finally chose a small town called Grass Valley, nestled among the pine forests of the Sierra Nevada. On Craigslist, I found a house for an unbelievably low price. I called the seller immediately. "Hi, I'm Will," a tired voice answered. I asked about the house, and he explained that it was old in a secluded area, and he wanted to sell it quickly. Will emphasized that he only accepted cash because he didn't trust banks or real estate agents. I scheduled a time to see the house before making a decision. A few days later, I drove 3 hours from Los Angeles to Grass Valley to see the house. Will was a middle-aged man with an unapproachable demeanor. The house was old but sturdy, surrounded by many trees and about 5 miles from town. When I asked him why he was selling it so cheaply, Will was silent for a moment, then said, "My wife, Ella, disappeared 2 months ago. I'm desperate to find her. Everything in this house reminds me of Ella, and I just can't stay here anymore." I was quiet after hearing Will's story, feeling sympathy for him instead of the unapproachable feeling I had at first. As Will showed me around the house, I heard a faint scratching sound from inside a wall somewhere. "What's that?" Will shrugged. "Squirrels and mice. They've been a problem for years. It's because of all the trees around here." Will generously offered to include all the tools and building materials if I agreed to buy the house, since he didn't need them anymore. I signed the contract that same day and gave Will the full amount in cash. Before he left, he stood there for a long time, looking around as if he was very attached to the place. 3 days later, I moved in with my best friend Levi to help me fix up the house. Levi is a contractor, so I completely trusted him to make all the decisions. On the first day, we planned to repaint the living room. As we took down all the items hanging on the walls, I noticed a picture of a woman with long hair. This must have been Ella, the wife Will mentioned. I carefully put the picture in a corner. When we started painting the walls, the scratching sound returned. This time it was louder and more frantic. "That animal sounds pretty big and strong," Levi said. "We should probably call a service to handle it." We turned on some music to drown out the noise and continued our work. By the 3rd day, as we were cleaning out the basement, I heard a faint sound, like someone crying. "Did you hear that?" I asked Levi. He stopped what he was doing and listened. "It's probably just the wind." But the next day, the crying returned, along with some screaming. At this point, We started to feel uneasy, but I had put all my money into this house. I had no choice but to continue with my plan. The next day, while doing some repairs in the basement, we discovered a wall that looked strange. The bricks and mortar were newer than the rest. "This wall was built recently," Levi said, touching the surface. "There might be another room behind it." After some discussion, we decided to break down the wall. After nearly an hour, we had created a large enough opening for us to go inside. Levi went first, shining his flashlight. Immediately, we were hit by an overwhelming stench. The flashlight beam swept around the room. We realized it was a small, windowless room with a low ceiling. Then I noticed the long brown hair of a woman. She was lying face down on the concrete floor, her body curled up. I screamed, clutching onto Levi, my heart pounding. He was also panicked and quickly shined the flashlight into another corner. But by doing so, we accidentally discovered the next horror. In the opposite corner, another woman was sitting, leaning against the wall, her head bowed. This time, Levi screamed even louder than I did. Suddenly, the woman slowly looked up. Her lips moved as if she was trying to say something. I started to walk towards the woman, despite Levi's attempts to stop me. My emotions were incredibly mixed at that moment. There was shock, disbelief, and a little anger. This was the house I had put all my money and effort into buying. I couldn't accept that it held such a horrifying secret. When I got closer, the woman looked at me with a look of great hope. On the wall near her, there were countless claw marks with dried blood on them. I realized this was the source of the scratching we had been hearing for the past few days. It was only then that I truly understood the horror of the situation. This woman had been locked in here for months, living in absolute darkness, with no food, only drops of water leaking from a pipe. She had been living next to a dead body. I pulled out my phone with a trembling hand and called 911. The police and an ambulance arrived within 10 minutes. They took the surviving woman to the hospital immediately and secured the scene. I sank into a chair and buried my face in my hands, crying. I knew I had been scammed, and all my plans and dreams were shattered. Levi sat down and comforted me for a long time. That day, the police arranged for us to stay somewhere else. 2 days later, the investigating officer called me. The woman who survived is Ella Thompson, the wife of Will Thompson, the man who sold me the house. The woman who died is Anna Kim, 24 years old. Ella had told us the whole truth. Anna Kim had come to the house to demand that Will leave his wife and marry her, threatening to tell Ella everything. Will killed Anna in a fit of rage, and when Ella threatened to call the police, he locked both of them in the room and sealed the wall. I felt stunned and cried a lot again when I learned the whole truth. Will was arrested at a motel in Sacramento. He confessed to murder and unlawful imprisonment. Ella recovered after 3 weeks of treatment at the hospital. As for me, I put the house back up for sale after having everything in the basement completely cleaned out. I'm living in a small apartment now. I learned an expensive lesson. Nothing is cheap and good in this world, and certainly nothing is free. It's been a year since this happened, but I still can't believe I survived because I fell asleep. I'm Ryan, 27 years old. I'm a UPS delivery driver in Pottstown, Pennsylvania. It was a normal workday in August. I parked in front of Miller Electronics. This was the last stop on my delivery route. I needed to pick up a large shipment of computer equipment that Mr. Miller had ordered from the UPS warehouse to deliver to a business customer tomorrow. Mr. Miller said he needed another 15 minutes to inspect and repackage the goods, so I sat in my truck and listened to country music on the radio. The exhaustion from a long day started to kick in. My eyelids grew heavy, and I don't know when I drifted off. A car horn jolted me awake. I checked my watch. It was 4:30 p.m. I'd been asleep for almost an hour, but the strange thing wasn't the time. It was the scene outside. The car horn I just heard seemed to be from a police car. The street, which was usually busy at this hour, was now empty like a ghost town. I got out of my truck, looking around in confusion. In the distance, I saw 3 police cars. Several officers were setting up orange barricades, blocking the main road that led to the town center where the city hall and a small square were located. There were also a few ambulances lined up. My heart started pounding. Something had happened. Tense was the only word I could think of to describe the feeling at that moment. The door to Miller's store was still open, but it was just ajar. I pushed the door open and walked in. My footsteps echoed in the empty store. The shelves were still full of electronics, but there were no customers. Behind the counter, I saw Mr. Miller crouching down as if he was hiding. When he saw me, he waved me over, his eyes wide with shock. I walked over, confused, not understanding why he seemed so scared. Mr. Miller glanced out the window, then pulled me down behind the counter, his voice trembling as he whispered, "Why are you just walking around? This whole neighborhood is on lockdown." I was confused. Mr. Miller continued to explain in the hurried tone of someone in a panic. An hour ago, someone called the police station, claiming they had planted bombs around the area and were watching from a distance with a sniper rifle. I froze. Bombs. Sniper rifle. Words I only heard on the news were now happening right where I stood. The man's wife had an affair with the manager of the Target store across the street, and he claimed he wanted everyone to pay. I let out a breath when I heard the story. I had been incredibly lucky. "You were asleep in your truck? You didn't hear anything?" I nodded. I had fallen asleep in the middle of a dangerous situation, but it was a stroke of luck. It was hard to believe. We sat in silence behind the counter, waiting for the latest news. Mr. Miller handed me a cold bottle of water. The sound of police helicopters flying overhead, their roaring engines creating a menacing sound that echoed throughout the space. Occasionally, we heard static from a walkie-talkie somewhere outside, brief commands that we couldn't hear clearly. About 20 minutes later, the glass door rattled from a loud knock. 3 men in black vests and helmets, holding rifles, stood outside, their serious eyes scanning every corner. Mr. Miller stood up, his hand shaking as he unlocked the door. One of the police officers walked in, his sharp eyes sweeping the store from ceiling to floor, looking for any sign of something unusual. A short but tense interrogation began. When I said I was a UPS driver who had been there to pick up a package since 3 o'clock, the police officer's eyes changed noticeably, as if he had just heard something wrong. The question about whether I had heard the threatening call made me admit the seemingly absurd truth. I had been sleeping in my truck the whole time. The police officer nodded. A moment later, an announcement came over the walkie-talkie. The situation was under control. There were no real bombs, no sniper rifle. It was just a fake threat call from a drunken man, angry about his wife's betrayal. But during those 3 hours, the entire neighborhood of over 2,000 people had to be evacuated in a panic. Stores closed hastily, owners leaving everything behind to flee. Schools went into lockdown, traffic was completely paralyzed, and main roads were blocked by barricades and police cars. But I was on the sidelines of that tension. That night, I lay in bed, staring at the ceiling, unable to close my eyes. I thought about the feeling of waking up in a silent world, about the moment of confusion when I didn't understand what was happening around me. I thought about how I could have died without ever knowing if that threat had been real. A bullet from a distance could have pierced through the truck window while I was asleep. From that day on, my work habits completely changed. No matter how tired I am, no matter how long I have to wait, I get out of my truck, walk around the area, drink coffee, and chat with people. I do anything to keep my mind alert. I am careful and pay attention to everything around me.
I'm Daria, 23 years old, currently residing in Phoenix. Devlin, my boyfriend for 6 months, was 2 years my senior. He's a very delicate and gentle soul who's a great listener. I'm feeling so lucky that we came across. A few weeks ago, Devlin had a 2-month business trip in Dallas. It would be the first time we're distancing ourselves. Every evening, around 9:30 p.m., Devlin would call me. He often asked about how my day went, complimented me on my beauty, and reassured me on him coming home soon. Sometimes I would also receive surprise gifts as well. This relationship brought me a lot of joy, knowing that I was respected and treasured. One night, after Devlin and I were having a joyful conversation, an account appeared in our chat. Devlin and I were wondering whether we should add that person in. Devlin said no, and so I went. That stranger account had no profile picture, nor anything in the camera. Devlin and I said hello, but answering us was an utmost silence. Devlin was really annoyed by this, and he had attempted multiple times at deleting the account, but to no avail. So we left the conversation, frustrated. After the third wheel encounter, we went to sleep, texting our goodbye. Yet I felt really odd about that strange account. The next evening, Devlin called me once again at 9:30 p.m. Seeing him brought me a lot of joy, and I turned on the call. As soon as we saw one another, that account bumped right in. Devlin was furious this time, and aggressively interrogated the stranger account on what he wanted. Suddenly, that account sent a message in the chat bar. Michael Brown, 31, San Jose. At first I thought he's trying to introduce himself, so I said hi back. But Devlin was not in the same boat as me. He was visibly angry with the account. He demanded the account to leave us alone, or else he'd call the police. I was really baffled by Devlin's oddly fierce behavior. He normally was very polite and gentle. Devlin then told me to turn off the call immediately, which I followed suit without anything else. A few minutes later, Devlin called me on my phone, stuttering and trying to tell me to never believe anything the other said. I could hear panic in his voice, same as exhaustion. Must be a tough week for him, I thought. While I constantly reassured Devlin and told him to get some rest, he kept babbling about keeping faith in him. Ending the call in a rather weird note, I kept thinking about Devlin's odd behaviors. The next day, Devlin was not online at all. He disappeared for an entire day. And in the evening, he told me he was having some urgent things to do and couldn't let me know beforehand. It's alright, I texted him back, then sunk down on my web surfing. Suddenly, that stranger account sent a message in the chat bar. Natalie Garcia, 21, model. What was going on? I mumbled, looking at the text. So I went online and searched for the Natalie Garcia on the internet. The information in her picture really puzzled me out. She was somewhat very similar to me, to the point of almost doppelganger. So Miss Natalie Garcia here was a newly risen model. Yet for the last couple of months, she was reported missing. After finishing my research on Natalie, I suddenly thought about the other account. So I came over to ask further. First about their intention at sending me Michael and Natalie's names. Yet the account had disappeared without any trace. Even stranger, due to me not deleting the conversation at all. Suddenly, Devlin called me on my phone, prompting me to pick up. Honey, can you look over the window for me? I did not reply, since I was still dumbfounded and clouded with disbelief over his sudden appearance. When I came over to pull away the curtain, Devlin was on my front porch, carrying a rose bundle and smiling at me. Everyone had a sweet spot, and to me, it was this sweet surprise. Devlin said he'd arranged this 2 days to go back to me and will return to Dallas later. For that 2 days, we left the bustling world behind and only cared about us. That strange account and its mysteries, I left it in the corner and let it be. When Devlin returned to Dallas after the short vacation, I helped him with the luggage. Suddenly, I saw a Californian ID. Curious, I lifted it up, showing the owner Michael Brown, 31 years old, residing in San Jose, California. The portrait showed a person that was seemingly Devlin, yet there were differences, as if it was him but wasn't him. Now, with this new discovery, I remembered the information that account sent, and it was uncannily accurate. However, as soon as I questioned Devlin about the ID I found, His attitude changed completely. He hushedly grabbed the card, saying that it was his twin brother. But he didn't look at me in the eyes, and I had never heard him mentioning about any of his brothers. I didn't press it further, and when he left, my mood wasn't in a good way. Upon returning home, I wanted to contact to that stranger account to ask everything out, and like already knew my intention, there was messages sent from that account to me. Get away from that killer, ASAP. The text put chills on the back of my neck. I had to read it again to calm enough to reply. Who are you? What do you know of my boyfriend? Everything. Can I see you in person for a conversation? Can't. I'm dead for 2 months now. My body started shaking uncontrollably. The text notification rang out one more time, and this time, I told myself I need to be calm and take care of things. A suburb abandoned house in Carefree. The last message made me shudder, and now I couldn't take it anymore. I turned off my phone and deleted all the messages, trying to forget this creepy thing. However, the curiosity slowly overtook me. I kept thinking about that abandoned house that account said. Also, Devlin's messages to me would make me grow more and more suspicious about him. What kind of secret did my boyfriend hold, I wondered. So I decided to get to the bottom of this. It's true that in Carefree suburb had an abandoned house. So I went there with a close friend of mine. As soon as we stepped in, a sense of dread and a nasty stench assaulted our noses, nauseating us. Too afraid to venture further, we decided to call the police. In my care, I bursted out crying. I couldn't control myself anymore. When the police arrived and scoured out the building, they found a decomposing body having the identification of Miss Natalie. The police also disclosed to me about a male suspect, Michael Brown, 31 years old. He's the #1 suspect to Natalie's disappearance and now death, being the victim's boyfriend at the time. Michael had likely undergone multiple steps to escape from the law for the couple of months, including paperwork forgery and plastic surgeries. My world was crumbled in front of me. I was lied to and taken advantage of for the last months. If it wasn't exposed soon, I might even join Natalie in the victim list. I brought everything I knew about Devlin, aka Michael, to the police, but it seemed that Weasel had smelled something and he deep dived again. I was instructed to relocate to avoid that killer. Yet the most unbelievable thing was that I talked to a ghost. That morning when I woke up, I received a message. Honey, can you look over the window for me? I lived with my parents and sister in a small town, right on the edge of the state. Ever since I was a kid, my dad didn't really have much interest or time for the family. My mom and sister always got to me with their cold and dismissive comments. When I was 20, after finishing a college program in programming, my mom and sister were always against me leaving home, even though I'd been old enough to make that decision for a couple of years. I got a job at a supermarket in the center of town, over 9 miles from home. I decided to rent a cheap apartment close to my job. Instead of supporting me, my mom and sister were annoyed and kept telling me I'd never be able to do anything. I'm guessing he'll be back in a month since he probably doesn't have enough money to cover the rent. My sister said that, but I just kept quiet. I'm determined to show them I can do more than they think. Unfortunately, I ended up moving back home just like she said, but not after 1 month, after 3 months instead. I didn't give up and was determined to live the free life I wanted. Then I announced that I was moving again because I'd found a job in my field in another city. This time, my mom and sister's reaction was even harsher. They came up with all sorts of crazy reasons to try to stop me from going through with my plan. My mom kept saying that I didn't love her and didn't care about my family. At that time, I only had enough money to get to the city where I was going to live, but it was still better than staying at home. For a week before I left, my mom kept trying to use herself as an excuse to change my mind. But when she saw that those things weren't working on me, she decided to agree. On the day I left, my dad was busy with work and wasn't home, so my mom and sister saw me off. My mom made me some cold cuts and packed up a few other things for me. I was hoping for more, like some words of encouragement or a little financial help, but I guess I was asking for too much, even though I was used to how my mom and sister treated me. My mom carefully packed 2 boxes of noodles and some other food and told me to keep them safe while I was traveling. I thought I'd never been pampered by my mom like that before. In the first few days in the new place, everything felt strange and unfamiliar. And there were times when I felt really homesick. I struggled with covering living expenses and getting around. When I grabbed a pack of cold cuts my mom gave me, I noticed something weird. Like the lid had been opened before, or it was torn. It didn't taste right to me, or maybe it was spoiled. But I think it was mostly just the taste, since I've never really liked cold cuts. About 20 minutes after dinner, I was getting ready to take a shower when I suddenly felt really nauseous. My head was spinning, and I had a bit of trouble breathing. I'd felt this way before, and I was trying to remember exactly when. The phone rang. It was my mom. Her first call since I moved out 4 days ago.
Have you eaten the food I packed for you?
Those were the first words she said when I picked up the phone. I ate a little, but it...
Make sure you eat everything. Good night.
After exactly 3 sentences, my mom hung up without waiting for me to finish or asking about how I was doing. My nausea and dizziness just kept getting worse. I ran to the bathroom, threw up everything in my stomach, and kept splashing water on my face. I stood on the toilet, gasping for breath, and then sat down on the floor. After about 15 minutes, I started to feel a bit better. I took a hot shower and went to bed early. The next morning, I still felt nauseous, but I had to go to work. A friendly colleague gave me a pack of cookies to snack on when he noticed I was tired. When I took the first bite, I froze for a few seconds because I recognized the taste. It was similar to the pack of cookies my sister gave me recently. After eating those cookies, I felt nauseous and uncomfortable, just like yesterday. The rest of the day, I couldn't focus on work. In the evening, I ended up buying fast food instead of eating the stuff my mom gave me. I looked online to check what might be causing my symptoms and see if there was a health issue. When I saw the results, I was just speechless. It could be a sign of cyanide poisoning. A call from my mom popped up on my phone screen. I felt shivers, pain, and fear when I saw the name Mammy with a red heart next to it on my screen. I didn't answer the call. I just stared at the phone screen until the ringing stopped. A few seconds later, the screen lit up again with a text message. "Have you finished eating?" That message felt like a solid confirmation of everything I'd been speculating. That night I cried a lot, until after 2 a.m. I quickly pulled myself together and tried to do well at work. The calls and messages from my mom and sister kept coming in more frequently and urgently, but I still chose to stay silent. Once, my dad called me, so I picked up, briefly told him about my situation, and then hung up. I didn't want to see my family again and didn't want to clarify my suspicions. I could not face it. More than 2 months later, on the bus ride home from work, I ran into my mom. The bus was pretty crowded, and my mom was sitting in the last row, giving me a cold stare. I quickly got off at the nearest stop, grabbed a taxi, and told the driver to hurry. After that meeting, I moved to a different state far away. No one knew where I lived, except for my best friend. I needed him to help me with a few things back home. More than a month after I'd settled in with work and accommodation, everything was going well, and that's when I received the test results. I wasn't related to them by blood. I also found out that my adoptive mom had bought me a life insurance policy worth up to $300,000. The beneficiary of the insurance payout after my death was my adoptive mom.
I am Jim, a police officer in the state of Illinois. One night, me and 2 buddies were out on night patrol. Everything was chill and the air was pretty cool for an October night. Yo, Jim, we got work again. Probably some stubborn kid out late or something, my buddy chimed in. And right after that, we started hearing a car engine getting louder, like it was speeding up. A blue car flew by, totally speeding. We signaled the driver down to stop real quick. Me and one of my buddies walked up to the car to check things out, while the other guy stayed by the patrol car, ready to jump in if needed. "Hello," I said. "Hold up, I'll call you back later. I'm talking to the cops." The driver quickly hung up when he saw us. It was this young guy, kind of rough looking and cold, with big, sort of bulging eyes, a buzz cut, and a short, scruffy beard. "What's up, officers?" "Did someone shoot at you?" I asked when I saw the back window had some bullet holes in it. Yeah, they did," the guy said as he tried to get out of the car. I quickly grabbed the car door and told him to stay put and answer my questions. "They shot at my car." He said he wasn't involved in any shooting. "I got attacked by some random armed guys." "What's your name?" "Randy." "You got ID on you?" "Yes, sir." "All right, Randy. I hope you cooperate." To keep things safe during the mission, I cuffed Randy and tossed him in the patrol car. While searching Randy's car, we found a little bullet-shaped bottle with white powder in it, and some of it spilled out by mistake. "Julian," I shouted to my partner. "I found it on the dash." Julian quickly pointed his flashlight to what I was holding, looking confused. "I already checked it out. Take a look." At first, I thought it was something illegal, but after testing it, it seemed like ecstasy. Still not totally sure, though. Pretty soon, my other partner found a decent amount of weed in Randy's car. Even though Illinois is one of the states letting adults use weed for fun, the amount you can have is strict, and you're not supposed to go back to your car after using it. We popped open the patrol car door and gave Randy a ticket for his violation. "'Cause you got some weed in your car, and there's something else." "What, sir?" Randy looked surprised by what I said. "Looks like some ecstasy." "What? Where?" "On the dash." "You sure? You check it?" Randy sounded pretty confident and kind of annoyed. I showed him the small bottle we found earlier, and Randy flipped out right away. No, you can't do that." Even though he was cuffed, Randy decided to reach forward and grab the bottle out of my hand. Without thinking, we shoved Randy back into the car, which just made him lose it even more. The guy started crying. "Give it back to me. What are you doing?" "That's my daughter. Give her back." Randy's words had me and the other guy staring at each other, totally shocked. No, that's my daughter. She died when she was 2. Give her back to me. We slammed the car door, left Randy inside, and tried testing the white powder again. Please, it's important to me. Please. Randy kept crying and begging. Our team looked at each other and decided to trust Randy. His dad was there too, so we gave it back to him, but still had to arrest Randy for using weed. After checking things out, turns out Randy did have a 2-year-old daughter. But the girl died because her mom, Randy's ex, totally neglected her, left her hungry, thirsty, and cold. She got charged with murder and sentenced to 20 years.
This was in the center console, and so I look at
head
it.
over to back where we were. Yeah. And instead, go walking southbound to the cut there and see if as he came, they got pissed off when he flew down the memorial.
At first, I thought it was heroin,
When he came down
and so then I checked for cocaine, but it looks like it's probably my ex pill.
Oh yeah.
So
Max, you got too much weed, anyways, and it's got to be like in different packaging. It's got to be like child resistant, odor proof.
No, bro. That's my daughter. What are y'all doing, bro? That's my daughter, bro. Give me that, bro. That's my daughter, bro. That's my daughter. What are y'all doing? No. Ask my daddy, bro. That's my daughter in there.
I will. Hang up.
What are y'all doing? Don't you know, bro? Y'all can't. Whoa, bro. Whoa. That's my. She just passed 2. She just passed last year. You know my. You know me, bro. That's her, bro.
Okay.
No, bro.
Let me talk to the
Bro,
officer.
please give me my daughter, bro. Put her in my hand, bro. Y'all are disrespectful, bro.
You need to move your arm.
Okay, bro. Can I please have my daughter?
This story is based on a real event that went down in Springfield, Illinois. 2 police officers were out on a night patrol when they spotted a blue car speeding. The driver was 26-year-old Dartavius Barnes. Dartavius' story touched the officers that night, and even the audience, as they saw the deep love he had for his daughter. Six months later, Dartavius sued the police for illegal arrest and search, claiming they desecrated his daughter's ashes, and he demanded compensation from the authorities. The lawsuit was set for 2022, but it got delayed after Dartavius was accused of attacking the police all over his daughter's ashes. And to this day, the case is still making its way through the courts. Mark, Danny, and I wanted to do something different for New Year's last year. No more loud cities, flashy fireworks, or packed bars. We were looking for a quiet spot, deep in nature, just snow, pine trees, and a huge night sky. So we booked a cabin on Airbnb, way up in the Montana mountains. We drove up in a pickup truck, tall pines lining both sides of the road, standing still under thick layers of snow. The higher we climbed, the emptier it got, and signs of people started to disappear. By the time we got there, the sun was almost down. The little cabin stood all alone in a sea of white, like something straight out of a winter painting. As soon as I stepped out of the truck, something felt off. The door was unlocked and slightly open. As we slowly pushed the door open, a warm burst of air hit us from the fireplace, with ashes still glowing faintly. Someone had definitely been here before, or maybe the owner left it that way to give us a cozy welcome. We didn't think too much about it, just quickly unpacked our stuff, all hyped up. Night came fast, and we lit up the fireplace, cracked open some beers, turned on some music, enjoyed the grilled meat we had cooked ourselves, and soaked in the peaceful mountain vibes. That little warm cabin in the freezing forest made us feel at ease, and we ended up sharing everything about the past year. Our laughter echoed through the night until we suddenly heard a knock at the door. I got up to check. Standing there was a guy, probably in his 40s, tall but skinny, wearing a dark coat dusted with snow. His face looked worn out, skin pale from the cold, and his deep, dark eyes felt like staring into an empty cave. He stood there quietly for a while, then finally spoke, his voice dry and rough.
Keep it down, guys. This isn't a place for parties.
After that, he stared at me for what felt like forever, like he was thinking about something, then turned around and left. I watched him walk away, not toward the main road, but straight into the forest, fading into the snowy trees. Silence filled the cabin. None of us said a word, just exchanged confused looks. Mark tried to crack a joke to lighten the mood, but his voice didn't have that easygoing vibe anymore. After a bit, we decided to brush it off and just focus on enjoying our chill time. But weird stuff kept happening. When Mark went out to grab more firewood, he came back looking pale, saying someone was following him. Danny checked the back door and found footprints in the snow all around the cabin. I checked the front door, and the lock definitely looked like someone had messed with it. There are creeps everywhere, as long as they don't mess with us. Who cares? Come on, guys, we're here to party and relax. Mark's good vibes caught on fast, and we let the booze pull us out of our guard. By midnight, that creepy guy was the last thing on our minds. The glass in my hand was empty, then full again, and the countdown to New Year's was about to start. 3, 2, 1. Then out of nowhere, a loud, sharp noise ripped through the moment. The window shattered, glass shards crashing to the floor with a sharp crackling sound. Mark screamed, totally freaked out, and fell to the floor. Danny jumped and dropped his glass, and I clutched my head, covering my ears. 3 more loud bangs echoed through the night, then everything went silent. We slowly looked at each other, completely shaken. Once I realized what was going on, I rushed to pull the curtain back, my hands shaking as I fumbled with my phone to call 911, but the signal kept cutting in and out. It felt hopeless. Then we heard slow, steady footsteps, crunching through the snow, each step hitting us like a punch to the chest. The moment the footsteps faded, the door started rattling. Someone was trying to get in. We called the cabin owner over and over, but no luck. It took almost an hour for the police to finally show up. They looked around and found bullet casings near the cabin, but no footprints, probably covered by the snow. One of the officers gave us a suspicious look. The cabin was a total mess, beer cans and wine bottles everywhere, the 3 of us red-faced, reeking of booze, and looking pretty rough. Are you sure you heard gunshots? Could have just been fireworks. That question had us looking at each other, kinda unsure now. The police left around 2 a.m. Mark and Danny crashed hard, and I tried to stay up to keep watch, but I knocked out pretty fast too. The next morning, we packed up in a hurry, deciding to leave earlier than planned. While cleaning up, I stumbled on something weird. On the windowsill near the fireplace, there was a crumpled piece of paper with shaky handwriting that said, "I warned you not to disturb me." A chill shot down our spines. This wasn't just in our heads, it wasn't some drunk hallucination. The 3 of us tossed our stuff into the car and got the hell out of Montana. On the way down, we finally reached the cabin owner. I told him everything, but he just laughed and said,
I rent out cabins, not basements.
I'm Joe, and back then I was 14 years old, with a best friend named Victor. At that rebellious, energetic, and curious age, Victor and I came up with all sorts of mischievous pranks. One afternoon, when we had no school, we decided to ride our bikes into the forest behind the school. We didn't dare venture deep into the forest, even though we always intended to. We even teased and dared each other about it. That afternoon, for some reason, Victor and I decided to venture deeper than the spot where we usually played tricks. We agreed to follow a straight path only, to avoid getting lost. Deep in the forest, the trees were much denser and more overgrown, creating a sense of both fear and curiosity for mischievous kids like us. The sky began to show signs of rain, with dark clouds appearing alongside gusts of wind. Victor and I became even more excited. We weren't in a hurry to head back, as we enjoyed playing in the rain. I was slightly startled when I saw something resembling a human shape staring at us from a distance. Noticing that the figure wasn't moving, Victor and I approached to take a closer look. It was a human statue, made of concrete and still very new. Victor and I touched the statue with amusement. "Interesting. A statue like this in the forest?" Victor exclaimed. "It's the same size as us, look," I said, standing next to the statue and comparing my height to it. "Look at its scared expression," Victor said, standing next to the statue and mimicking its expression, making us both laugh loudly. "Victor, why does the statue feel warm?" I wondered after placing my hand on the statue's stomach. Victor hadn't had a chance to react when I exclaimed, "Wait a minute, I recognize this. Victor, it's a classmate of mine." Victor looked at me with a doubtful expression. "I'm pretty sure he hasn't been to school for 2 days." A chilling, terrifying feeling enveloped us, and the eerie atmosphere made us freeze for a few seconds, staring at each other. "Joe, do you see it?" Victor pointed behind me with a look of astonishment. Behind a large oak tree, 2 hands were gripping the trunk, suggesting someone was hiding behind it. We slowly approached, and behind the oak tree was another statue, this one positioned as if it was hugging the trunk tightly. Victor stood frozen, while I mustered enough courage to approach and take a closer look. After all, it was just a statue, or so I thought. "Joe!" Victor shouted loudly, causing me to jump. "This is the older brother of my neighbor." I immediately stepped back, looking at the statue, which had an expression of pain and despair. At the left elbow, there was a crack in the cement, and a horrifying smell of decay wafted up as the storm arrived. Victor and I looked at each other, both of us understanding the gravity of the situation. Victor, in sheer terror, turned and ran away. I had never seen him run so fast. I ran after him, calling out loudly, but Victor didn't look back and soon disappeared behind the trees. I wasn't fearless. In fact, my fear was even greater than Victor's, to the point where I couldn't run fast. I heard cries and pleas from behind after running a fair distance, but I didn't dare look back, unsure if the sounds were real or just my imagination. When I returned to the original spot, I still saw Victor's bicycle standing there. Not thinking much, I quickly jumped on the bike and pedaled fast back home. The rain began to pour heavily, obstructing my view, and I could only pedal as fast as possible. I navigated the bike by mentally mapping out the familiar path, as my eyes couldn't stay open from the rain. My parents were very angry when they saw me come home in such a state. I was terrified and trembling, unable to speak. About 20 minutes later, after calming down, I recounted the entire incident, and my father immediately called the police. That evening, the whole neighborhood was stunned as the police moved the 2 statues out of the forest. Victor's mother ran to my house in a state of panic, asking because she hadn't seen him since the afternoon. I felt like electricity was coursing through my body. I had forgotten about my friend. I recounted the events to the police, and in my fear, I began to cry. Victor's bicycle was found, but he was not. Witnessing Victor's parents suffering, I have always felt that I am partly responsible for this incident. The perpetrator has still not been found, and there are no clues about him. The motive and purpose behind his actions remain unknown. The police set up a checkpoint at the edge of the forest after the incident to continue investigating and searching for Victor and the perpetrator. At the same time, they issued a law prohibiting residents from entering the forest. My mental state was severely affected after the incident. Whenever I recall that moment, I can't help but wonder, was the pleading cry actually Victor calling out to me?
I'm Thomas, a freelance programmer, mostly just working from home. So one day, I was in the middle of this important project, and my home internet just crashed, messing up my progress. I called up Spectrum, and a repair guy showed up that same afternoon. The repair guy checked the cables real quick and said the best move was to run the cable through the basement for a more stable connection. You can go do other stuff. It's pretty dusty and cramped down here. I'll let you know when I'm done. The guy was friendly. I was okay for it and let him get to work. Meanwhile, I just finished up my stuff on the laptop in the living room. The sound of the chainsaw starting up, plus the drilling and chiseling noise, I eventually just got used to it and focused on my work. I'm not sure how long it had been, but suddenly I noticed it was totally quiet in the house. I checked the clock and it was almost 7 and already dark out. Guess he's done for the day, I thought, and tried connecting to the internet on my phone. Still no signal, so he'll probably come back and finish it up tomorrow. I wrapped up my work and made a quick dinner. While I was eating, I remembered the repair guy from earlier. Still had a couple questions, so I decided to give him a call. It rang forever, but he didn't pick up. Maybe I should just leave him alone. Later that night, I just messed around on my phone for a bit and then knocked out. Not sure how long later, but in my half-asleep days, I started hearing a saw and chisel. Kind of random. Sometimes it'd stop, then suddenly start up again. Kind of knew that sound wasn't part of a dream, but I was still too out of it to snap out of it. Out of nowhere, a scream, like pure terror, blasted through my ears and made me jump up like crazy. But when I opened my eyes, the room was totally quiet. I just sat there for a bit, kind of zoned out. Maybe I'm just tripping from the noise earlier. I just laid down and passed out again real quick. The next day, I hit up the repair guy again and needed to wrap up that important project today. But after calling him 5 times, it just kept ringing forever. I called the company, and they told me they hadn't been able to reach that guy since yesterday. Everything was a mess. So Spectrum said they'd try to get a hold of the guy or send someone else to finish up my service. After sipping some coffee and waiting around, I thought about heading down to the basement to check out what's going on down there. The guy's tools were all over the place, like he was still working and had no plans to stop. A backpack that I think the guy was wearing when he showed up here. I grabbed my phone and called him again, and the vibration freaked me out. After checking for a bit, I figured it was in there. I opened up the backpack, grabbed the phone. Tom. That's my nickname at home. Only my family calls me that. He knows my nickname and actually saved it in my contacts. His backpack and phone are still here, so he hasn't left. What the hell is going on? I realized this was way more complicated than I thought. I called up Spectrum again and told them everything I found down in my basement. I knew it was wrong, but I still decided to check out the rest of the stuff in the backpack. A few pills, a small knife, a mask, some old clothes, and a bunch of photos. Each thing I pulled out made me think about the picture of... I grabbed the stack of photos, and as soon as I saw the first one, I got chills, because it was a familiar scene. I started flipping through the rest of the photos faster and faster. All of them were of me, taken from different angles, like I was being followed for a while. The photos had the date and time on them, and the notes were all creepy, like the person was a pervert. I was so freaked out I couldn't even talk. I called the police, but had no idea where to start. In the end, I could only tell the police my home address and ask them to come immediately. Feels like something's missing. A drill. I looked around the basement. I saw a dark figure in the distance and I froze. Took a couple steps back, then just ran and scrambled to get out of the basement. I locked the door tight and listened. The silence was scary, and I felt all sorts of uneasy in my own house. The police showed up, and then I realized I was actually breathing again. The shadow I saw earlier was the guy from the repair team, nailed into the wall with a bunch of nails, and the biggest one was stuck right through his throat. I just collapsed, gasping for air and puking non-stop. So last night, the sound I heard was of a murder. After I got myself together at the hospital, the police set me up somewhere else to stay, and they sealed off the house for an investigation. I didn't stay where the police set me up. I just bounced to another city, started a new job, and moved on with my life. "Mr. Thomas, open up. We've got to talk." That was the police. How did they know where I was living? "Mr. Thomas, you're under arrest. You're the main suspect in the murder case in your own basement."
I'm Kane. I'm 35 and work at an auto shop in downtown Dallas, Texas. I work in sales, so I need to be good at talking to people and understanding what makes them tick. But I messed up by letting money get in the way of my professional ethics. That whole thing destroyed the shop's reputation, and yeah, I ended up getting fired. At the time, I didn't really grasp how serious the consequences were. I was so optimistic that I thought if I didn't work at this shop, there'd be tons of other places lining up to hire me with a big salary. After all, I was a great employee, but the whole auto industry turned me down when they saw my resume. My longtime girlfriend also left me. She was fed up with my indifference and decided to kick me out. None of my friends wanted to help, so in a pretty low state, I just wandered around the park. In my lowest moment, I spotted a job ad from a real estate company posted on a tree. Without a second thought, I grabbed that notice like it was a lifeline. Just 40 minutes later, I was at their office. It turned out to be a small office run by a 65-year-old guy named Beavis. Mr. Beavis had some real estate, like houses and small plots of land, that he wanted to sell to fund his retirement. Beavis didn't ask me any questions about experience or skills. He handed me a contract and said that if I could sell the house listed on it, I'd get a $500,000 commission. Over the past 3 years, a lot of people have tried to sign the contract, but no one's actually sold the house. I was surprised, excited, and a bit skeptical, so I asked again to make sure about the commission I'd get. After getting a solid confirmation from Beavis, I signed the contract right away. I drove to the house, full of enthusiasm and determination, even though it was pretty far from the city center. The house wasn't new and wasn't too big, but it was comfortable enough. I stopped in the biggest bedroom next to the living room, lay down on the bed, and finally felt my tired body relax after being on edge for days. I woke up suddenly, looked around the dark room all groggy, checked my phone, and realized it was almost 7 p.m. I'd actually had a really good nap. When it was time to leave, I stood up and was shocked to see a dark figure standing at the door, just staring at me. I must have been still groggy from just waking up. I went to turn on the light, looked around, and noticed that the wardrobe door was slightly open. I walked over, shut the cupboard door, and was surprised to find an old kitchen knife inside. I picked up the knife and walked to the kitchen and put it back in its place. As I looked around, an idea suddenly popped into my head. "Good evening, Mr. Beavis. This house is wonderful. I wanted to ask if I could stay here until the house is sold." "Yeah, no problem. Just make sure everything stays in good shape. I hung up the phone and jumped for joy. My housing problem was sorted out for now. As soon as I turned to look at the living room, a dark figure suddenly vanished behind the TV shelf. I stopped. This time I wasn't imagining things, so I slowly walked over to the TV. But then I heard a noise from the kitchen again, so I quickly turned around. The kitchen knife I saw earlier had just magically fallen out of the knife holder. I picked up the knife, took a good look at it, and then shrugged it off. It wasn't anything serious. This was the only place I had at the moment, so choosing to stay happy and optimistic seemed like the best option. I put the knife back where it belonged and ordered some dinner. After eating, I took a shower, changed into comfy clothes, and started posting the house for sale. Over 20 minutes after I posted the house info on my personal page, I got a few comments asking for more details. I jumped out of bed, stood in front of the mirror, and practiced my pitch for the house. Suddenly, I heard a creaking sound that wouldn't stop. I turned around and was surprised to see the wardrobe door open again. There must be a problem with the hinge, so I used a rope to tie the wardrobe door shut and went back to bed. By this point, my post had a few more comments and a handful of people were showing interest in the house. But there was one account that claimed to be a local resident commented, "This house is haunted." After reading the comment, I quickly deleted it and blocked the account. Thinking about all the strange stuff that's happened since I got here gave me chills. But I didn't let it bother me for long. My work was going great, and I figured I'd sell the house quickly and be out of here. I browsed the web for a bit longer and then went to sleep. The next morning, I woke up to the sound of a blaring alarm clock. I was grimacing from not getting enough sleep, fumbling around to find my phone and turn off the alarm. A cut running down the middle of my palm gave me a sharp pain and woke me up. I sat up, looked at my hand bleeding, and started to panic. Then I looked around and noticed the kitchen knife had been on the bed for a while. The blood kept flowing, so I had to take care of the wound right away. As soon as I opened the door, I was shocked to see the TV shelf and the sofa blocking the exit. I used all my strength to push the shelf, but the wound on my hand reopened, and I screamed in pain. Finally, I managed to squeeze through a small gap. I quickly ran to the kitchen to grab the medical kit and bandage the wound, then breathed in exhaustion. I looked around the house and noticed nothing valuable was missing, and the door was still locked. What the heck just happened? Could it be that this house is actually haunted? The phone rang again, and it was an unknown number that seemed to be coming from a landline. I answered the phone, feeling pretty down. "Get out of here." A woman's voice came through cold and angry. I got chills from that, so I hung up right away. I tried to calm down and then headed to the living room. I froze when I saw that the landline phone wasn't in its usual place, like someone had just used it. Feeling suspicious, I dialed my own mobile number, and it showed up on the landline's call list. At that moment, I was on high alert and in full defense mode. I checked all the locks and looked around the house, but everything seemed normal. Feeling suspicious and scared, I went up to the second floor of the house. As soon as I reached the top of the stairs, I felt like I should look to the left down the hallway. Right away, a dark shadow darted into a nearby room. I screamed out loud by reflex, my heart pounding in my chest. I approached the door slowly, took a deep breath, grabbed the doorknob, and turned it hard, but the door was locked from the inside. I shook the handle hard and shouted loudly, and suddenly the room was filled with the sound of a baby crying. Just a few seconds later, the crying suddenly stopped. Not a ghost, must be a person, I whispered to myself, wanting to open the door and see what was inside. I ran downstairs to grab the spare key, but when I got back, the door was ajar. I ran inside and there was nothing out of the ordinary. Hearing the noises from above, an idea popped in my mind. I said to myself, it's coming from the attic. Instead of checking the attic, I went downstairs, locked all the doors and windows from the outside, and then called the police. 10 minutes later, the police showed up. After checking the whole house, they uncovered the truth, and it shocked both Beavis and me. In the attic of the house, there was a woman named Laura and her 6-year-old child. They were homeless and had been living in the house for the past few years. All the creepy stuff was set up by them to spread rumors about hauntings so Beavis couldn't sell the house. Laura and her child looked pretty rough, with skinny bodies and pale skin. Beavis didn't report them to the police. Instead, Laura and her child were introduced to a federal program for the homeless and got a fresh start. I managed to sell the house and felt like this job was meant for me, so I decided to stick with it and develop my skills. I definitely won't make the same big mistake again.